Hey, it's Jessie. You want to know what one of the biggest disservices we do to ourselves as parents is? Sorry, gotta look at my potato so I don't lose a fingertip. We hear it takes a village to raise a child. And, the village is important. But I think sometimes we place too much importance on that and we diminish our own value in speaking into our children's lives. The same goes for teachers, coaches, doctors. All of those people are important, but none of them have the same role that you do as a parent. And somehow, sometimes that gets lost. Some of it is just like, seriously, the view of society right now and how things should go. Some of it is legal. Like when my child turned, was it 13? Where the doctor said I wasn't legally allowed to know some of their things, that they had privacy. My kids and myself had a talk, because how in the world could I be responsible for them as their parent if I don't know what's going on? So when we had that conversation, this is veering a little off topic, but when I had this conversation with them, it wasn't controlling. It wasn't, I'm the mom and you have to tell me everything. It was, I can't help you. I can't be responsible for you. I can't do any of the things that I'm supposed to do if I don't know what's happening. And if you run into trouble, I won't know how to help you because I won't know what's going on. So it wasn't all about control. There's a reason I disagree with this. And that law was made to protect children of parents who would have used that information wrongly. And I'm not one of those. And that was the conversation I had with my kids. But I digress to the purpose of this video. Think of, as a parent, when your kid was younger, the times that you have heard another parent, or maybe said yourself, I'm going to let the teacher handle that. I'm going to let the coach handle that. When they're in that sport, this coach is going to teach them these things. And that's not their job. Their job is to enhance what we've already done as parents. So when we just nope, they're going to do this for us, it doesn't go well. And it breaks trust between you and your child. Because at some point, maybe not right away, but at some point they're going to see that other parents are doing those things. And they're going to wonder why you didn't. And it's going to make them feel maybe a little unloved. Maybe like they weren't worth your time or your trouble. Because usually, and there's scientific things to back this, I've also lived through this as a child. The child blames themselves when they're younger. When they get older, they do blame their parents more. But younger, they blame themselves. Why wasn't I worth it? Why wasn't I good enough for mom to love me that much? Why wasn't I enough for dad to want to take the time to do this with me, or to teach me this, or to learn these things himself if he didn't know it, so he could be there for me? That's just the way it works. The answer right now that I hear a lot, especially for teenagers, when there's problems, is people like, get a therapist, go to counseling. And I have a friend who's a therapist. She does fantastic work. She does great. And in her practice, they deal with parents and teenagers. There's another counselor there, and they split. One meets with the parents, one meets with the teenagers. And it's a wonderful practice, and it does very well, and it helps people. And I don't want to diminish that. Just like I don't want to diminish teachers or coaches or any of those things. But the answer isn't always go to therapy. I had a situation with one of my teenagers that, now, mind you, I have 4 teenagers in this house. Not anymore, but at one time. So I've seen a lot, because each child is different. Each set of teenage years for the children is different. And with this one, I was out of my depth. I thought I had a pretty good idea of things, and this one just threw me for a loop. And I considered therapy, and I talked with some other parents, very trusted ones. Not everybody, it was not a group chat. I was very specific in who I sought conversations with in that point in time, because I knew what everybody would say to do. So I wanted to hear some very specific thoughts of parents that had gone through it, and their pros and cons and all of those things. And the one I talked to had done therapy for her children, both of them, especially one that had gone through some rough times, just like I was going through. And she told me when I think their first therapist didn't work out so well, and she saw the damage that did to her child. So she made a notebook with questions, and she would go in and meet with the therapist first and ask them questions, and she would interview the therapist. And I think that's something more people should do as an aside, because even if they're a great therapist, they might not work the best for you or your situation, or they might not be rated the best therapist, but maybe they're going to be perfect for you and your situation. You don't know until you go to talk to people. So I had done that. I had made my own notebook, and I had called some places and had done some interviews. That's what I was doing. And it just didn't feel right. I am a believer in that you get those feelings sometimes, you know, that something just isn't right. And I can tell you, in my 40-something years on this earth, whenever I go against that feeling, I'm proven that I should have. So in that particular circumstance, I had found a place that had good ratings online. I had talked to people who had been there. They had answered my questions well. I mean, everything looked like this would be our place. And we got to the point of scheduling. And I told them, because, you know, I just had that feeling that that wasn't right for me, for us, for my child and me. So I told them I would need to get back with them. And it never did feel right. And it was shortly after that that, you know, I had been working on what to do next. And I had kind of pieced together a temporary plan for my teen. And it ended up working out well and evolving. And I did call the place back and told them, you know, we wouldn't be going. And it was one of those things where you call up and they're like, oh, can I ask why? I just don't feel like it's the right fit. I'm a little more confident now to say that to people because I know that that's the truth. But at that time, I had invested my time, I had invested their time, and I was like, I don't feel it's right. You know, I mean, it's okay to even say those things like that. You know, as long as you make the right decision, how boldly you say it doesn't always matter as long as you say it. Fast forward years later, okay, we've done all this work, my teenager and I, and we've rebuilt trust on both sides because there were things that they hadn't trusted me with that I wasn't untrustworthy about, but I could see how they had interpreted things, and that was a discussion that we had multiple times in different ways. So years later, fast forward, our relationship is restored, we're doing good, and I tell my child that, you know, at that time, I had found a therapist and I was going to have you go. And, you know, I could have went, you could have went, you know, there were the different ways to put that out there. My child looks at me straight in the eyes and says, I would have absolutely hated you for doing that. I was like, why? I was trying to help. I was trying to make things better. And my child said to me, I would have felt like you were passing me off. I would have felt like I was such a problem that you didn't want to fix it, to fix me, to fix our relationship, and that you were passing me off. I would have hated you for it. And I was like, oh, okay. And I've read some of these, you know, if you go online, you can research and read some of these other circumstances and parents that run to therapy because that's what they're told to do. And then I'm reading this and I read teenagers' responses that I hated it. I hated it. I hated it. Now, a lot of the parents it was helpful for, because as parents, we don't have a rule book, right? So you go to therapy and you can talk and you can get ideas and you can get things to try. But if you make your teenager go and they aren't willing or they don't want to, yeah, they feel like you're pushing them off onto somebody else. Just like they might have thought about being in a sport. I coached cheerleading for a while, a program that ran kindergarten through 8th grade in our community. And there were parents that I saw that brought their teenagers in there, like, fix them. Because it was a sport and there was a coach. And that's what they had been told, that they'll learn discipline and they'll learn self-control and they'll learn all these things. And I watched, you could see it on these parents, their expectations. Some of the kids didn't even want to be there. They didn't want to. Their kids heard coaches can do these amazing things and brought them in. And so I had to talk with those kids. And some of them I had to talk with their parents. And it's like, you know, I want to help these kids. They don't want to be here. Like, can we talk? Can I give you, you know, can I be of assistance to you because your kid doesn't want to be here? That story is probably a little off track. But my point is, as parents, don't forget you have a place in your child's life, in your teenager's life, that nobody else can fill. So don't push that off onto a teenager, onto a coach, onto a doctor. They're there to be helpful, but they're not you. So if you don't know what to do next, I mean, there are people, there are teachers and coaches and doctors and coaches like me that coach parents of teenagers that are there to help you. But we're there to help you so that you can help your teenager, that you can help your child. We are your support because you are the biggest support that your kid needs and wants. Whether they tell you that, especially once you get to teenage years, they're not going to tell you that. But if you stick with it, if you learn the things that you need to know to get through whatever you're facing right there, and you get to the other side, you'll know then it was all worth it. I mean, think back to when you were a teenager. I know how I was a teenager. Even if you came off as confident, every teenager has a part that questions themselves. And to come into a situation with a parent, and be open and vulnerable and honest and ask for help, there has to be a high level of trust there. So if your teenager feels even in the slightest that that's not there, they're not going to say they want your help. I mean, if you were around somebody that you felt did not have your best interest, that you didn't feel was trustworthy, all of these things, would you ask them for help? And I know that's not maybe who we are, but if that's how we're perceived by them. And I'm not saying you should go around and kiss up to them to change that. No, I'm talking about to change that if you're not there. Like I wasn't there with my teenager over a misunderstanding that festered for years. We had a lot of rebuilding to do. They had to see that I was who I said I was and not who they were thinking in their head over a misunderstanding. And that takes time, especially if they were truly believing that about me, and they were. So we both had to rebuild trust. But only we could do that.